Recap in minutes. We will be going through a drama and war movie from 2008 entitled Che. It is part 1 of the 2-part movie series. There will be spoilers ahead in today's video, so chill out and enjoy. The movie begins with scenes from March 1952. A Cuban military general named Fulgencio Batista overthrew the democratic government of Cuba and established himself as the country's leader. He suspended the constitution, dissolved the Congress, and began a campaign of repression against the political dissidents, as well as the protesters on the streets. After 3 years of this coup d'etat, the movie shifts to the scenes of Ernesto Che's family in Mexico City. The family welcomes Fidel at the dinner and talks about the precarious conditions of their country, Cuba. Fidel tells them that 20% of all Cubans are permanently unemployed, and 1.6% of the landowners control 46% of the land. Infant mortality is higher than ever before and the illiteracy rate is 37%. But if anyone tries to speak out in Cuba, the thugs of the dictatorship immediately gun him down. They are cursing the corrupt generals and military officers, who are busy stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the treasury, and depositing them into the United States and European banks. After the dinner, Che asks Fidel if he has a boat and some warriors to go to Cuba. He answers that he can take some fighters to Cuba. After some time, they get on a boat and sail toward Cuba. In the next scene, it's 1957 and Ernesto Che was in some forest coughing from his triggered asthma. He along with his other companion was walking to go to Havana. Meanwhile, his companion comes to him and tells him to be quiet, as some Cuban soldiers are passing nearby. Che faces a lot of difficulties holding his cough while the soldiers pass. After that, they walk to one of their facilitators' huts in the forest. He treats Che for some time and arranges their stay for a night there. The next day, they move again into the forest. Che meets another commander of Fidel named Jorge Sotis. He tells Che that he is leading all of his guerrillas to meet Fidel in the forest camps. After some time, one of their soldiers comes to them, and tells them that Fidel is coming to them. Che welcomes them. At night Fidel calls all of his commanders into his tent and tells them about his next movements. He divides his men into 3 columns under the leadership of Raúl, Almeida, and Jorge Sotis. They plan their patrolling in the forest to take down the soldiers of the dictator Batista. One of their columns collects the explosives and munitions from their companies on the base. On May 28, 1957, Fidel along with his commander Che, attacked a check post of the Cuban military in the forest. Initially, the plan was to be covert, but one single missed shot by Fidel alerted the Cuban military. They retaliate with intense firing and kill multiple men of Fidel. They fight with heavy machine guns and march forward. Fidel also advances following Che and paralyzes the military intelligence of the Cuban force. Che blows the petrol bomb and captures the barracks. Eventually, Fidel and his guerrillas take the Sierra Maestra barracks. After capturing the post, they treat their wounded men at the camp for a while. Meanwhile, Che advises Fidel to take their wounded men to nearby Israel Pardo's farm. Initially, he refuses but agrees afterward and orders Jorge Sotis to give him the best weapons so he can guard his men. Then Che and some of his men take their wounded guerrillas from there, and march into the forest to reach Pardo's farm. They carry their comrades along the hills and dress them from time to time. After walking miles in the forest, they find Pardo and stop him, suspecting him as some military intelligence personnel. When they get close to him, they confirm his identity and take their wounded men into their hut. They treat their guerrillas and rest there for some days. Che asks Pardo to send him the patients from the village so he can check on him. He checks the local residents and prescribes some medicines for them and the care they need. The next moment, Che comes out into the woods and inspects the new men who want to join them. He asks them if they have guns, they can stay, otherwise leave. He explains to them that, if they are attacked and unarmed, they cannot defend themselves, so get arms first. After that, they march the hills to clear the area from any upcoming military attack. In the next scene, the movie tells a story from 1967 when Ernesto Che is in America on a visit. He narrates that defeating imperialism is difficult, because they do not recognize that it is based in the United States of America. He says that in capitalism, people live in an invisible cage. They accept the myth of a self-made man. But they do not understand that the opportunities of the majority are determined by a force that is completely beyond the individual's control. The scene shifts back to Che again. He was patrolling the area along with his men and found 3 of their men dead near a burnt cottage. He orders that he wants a vanguard 100 yards ahead of them at all times. The next moment, one of his watch guards comes to him and informs him that the locals have told him about the incident from last night. He says that there was a terrible battle at the Estrada Palma military base. He said one of their column commanders, Raúl, is injured and the military is coming to us now. After that, Che does his calculations and orders his men to climb the hills to leave this area. Eventually, they walk through the forest and reach the company of Raoul. They tell Che that there were rumors of a fight and injury of Raoul. Raoul was not really wounded and they surrounded the military there. But they escaped at night. Che meets Raoul and his subordinates there. When they were resting, they saw a political delegation visiting them. They offered them a political alliance with General Batista if they stopped their guerrilla operations. After they depart, Che comes to Fidel's cabin and asks him what was going on with them. Che tells him that they are manipulating us in the name of negotiations. We will win the war eventually, so we do not need to get ourselves involved in their delaying tactics. Fidel instructs him to wait for a while and see what they say after their requirements. Che suspects them that, when they will lose the war, they will handle the keys to the US. Fidel angrily responds that nobody will be able to give any key to anyone. After that, he asks him to sign a condolence letter as a commander. Che gets surprised to know that Fidel has made him a comandante. He assigned him the responsibility to command Captain Lalo Sardinas, Ramiro Valdez, and Ciro Redondo. Fidel tells him that he is forming a new column on the eastern side of Mount Torquinto under his command. The next moment, Che reaches his column and instructs them according to the orders of Fidel. After that, they move to climb the hills to reach the mountain Torquinto. While they were walking to reach there, suddenly their column got ambushed by some unknown attackers. They get alerted and take positions to neutralize the place. Heavy gunfire ensues. They kill many men in Che's column with mortars too. They hide in the woods to understand the location of the attackers. They sneak into the woods and reach their location. They find out that they are a traitor group from their guerrillas. They surround them and take them aside from the population. Che decides to kill them all for stealing from the poor and terrorizing them in the name of revolution. He shouts at them that the punishment for treason is death. After this, he takes them into the woods and executes them. In the next scene, Che meets the villagers and offers his condolences for their losses. Some men tell him that they want to join them too, because they are fed up with Batista's authoritarian rule. Che asks them about their ages and education, and drops the younger ones. He explains to them that they are not only fighting with guns, but they need some educated and qualified persons too in their formations. His captain, Ciro Redondo, explains the hardships of the battlefield to them. He tells them that they do not sleep and eat for days in the field. If you still want to join us, it will be your own choice. He makes the educated woman a teacher for them, to teach them how to write and read. Finally, when they decide to move without the underage boys, they sit down on the grass, protesting to take them with them. After some time, they train the recruits with education and tactics. One day, Che aligns them and asks them again if there is anyone who wants to leave to come forward. Some men show up and describe their excuses for quitting the movement. Che ignores the excuses and orders them to leave everything that belongs to the column, and leave the base. After that, he talks to the remaining recruits. He alerts them that some hard days are on the way. The next moment, the column trains them on the battle techniques, weaponry information, and daily chores. They fought Batista's army and continued to get control of more and more villages of Cuba. They treat the residents of the liberated villages. The people continued to join them in their struggle to overthrow the military rule of General Batista. After some time, when the boys were on their usual patrolling, they were attacked by Batista's army. They run to inform Che. Che immediately orders everyone to take positions and the paramedic staff to take shelter. They bomb their location. Che and his men hide under the shelter. After the attack, they pick up their injured soldiers and take them to another location. Che orders them to take the prisoners to the house of his comrade, as Batista's army has taken over their camp. In the next scene, Che meets Fidel. He makes him in charge of the recruits. When he asks about his responsibility as a commander, he tells him that Ramiro will take his position. After some time, Che and his men meet the representatives from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. They ask him who will be their leader after overthrowing the dictatorship of Batista. They all consult and share a name, Fidel. They agree to make him the commander-in-chief of all the rebel forces in the country. At night, Che visits Fidel and congratulates him for being elected as the commander-in-chief of Cuban rebellion forces. He encourages him, saying that he has entered the path of the greatest men of the Americas. He replies that this success would not be possible if he were on his own. He assigns him the duty to unite all the rebel factions of the country. He expressed his plan to capture Las Villas province. After some time, representatives from an armed rebel group come to visit Che. They express their consensus to join hands with his 26th of July movement in all military maneuvers. They said they even agree with their agrarian reforms. After them, other representatives from Manoyo's Second Front come to meet him and say they are also ready to join them, but they will not stop collecting the land taxes. After agreeing to their terms, Che speaks to their columns and says he will be their new in charge now. He says anyone can leave if he does not want to fight under him. After that, they attack the regional check post at dawn and capture it. The next day, a girl comes to their camp and asks him to let her work for them. He refuses her, saying that it is not a place for people who cannot fight. When she insists, he tells her that they have started collecting taxes from the landowners. Eventually, he assigns her a duty to collect the taxes from the landowners and leaves. After that, they continued their movement to capture government buildings, villages, towns, and cities. From villages to cities, they remained victorious with the support of the public. One day, when they were in a city near Placid, they got surrounded by Batista's army. They warned them to hand over their weapons to him, and surrender. Che and his men wait for Camilo and his platoon to rescue them. While on the other hand, a newly posted colonel arrives at the Santa Clara garrison to fight the army of Che. Meanwhile, Che reaches a radio station and airs a message saying that the people should cooperate with them, as the army of the dictator has become more brutal and violent towards the people of Cuba. The next moment, the colonel orders his army to start airstrikes in the corners of the city. In this attempt, he kills and injures many people in the streets. Che rushes to the hospital, taking his wounded men there. He gets a call from his man. He informs him that they have taken the railway station. Che orders him to take another 16 men with him, and go the train tracks between Toscano and San Pedro. He instructs him to wait for them there. After that, Che and his company go there and attack the stopped train of the troops. Seeing this sudden attack, the train moves. Che and his men follow the train through the city, while another company of Che's column is busy fighting the blockade on the church. They decide to break the walls of 5 houses to get into the garrison. On the other hand, the train enters the city and crashes at a cut on the tracks. In the next scene, they all go to the church. The troops kill his men, including his suicide squad leader. Che makes Tamayo the leader of the squad, and orders him to keep breaking the walls. After breaking the walls, they get into the church and take their positions. They start killing the troops eventually. After this, their colonel and major flee the office and order their captain to control the situation. On the other hand, the train commander waves to surrender. After his surrender, Che goes to the garrison, where Captain negotiates with him for the truce, but he explains to him that it's either unconditional surrender or they'll take the garrison by force. When the captain asks him to give him some time to discuss this matter with his superiors, he tells him that he will only give him an hour before the attack. He comes back to his men, where they were rejoicing in their victory. He orders them to get ready to go to Havana. Che also enjoys it with them. The movie ends when they capture the fugitive colonel. Che orders them to keep him under strict watch and moves from there. They all get in the jeeps, and start their journey toward Havana on the 2nd of January 1959. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Recap in minutes for more videos like this, and help the channel grow.